Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, August the 12th, and welcome to our commentary. Just a quick heads up on Friday night, we're going to be recording a podcast with our friend George Rodriguez, and we'll have that up Friday night and for the entire weekend. I'll put it up on my Facebook page as well so you can listen to it. And we'll be talking about what's happening in South Texas, a lot of interesting things always happening down there, what's happening in Texas in general. And we're going to talk about this incident with Beto O'Rourke. I have a post about this coming out Saturday morning. But as you may have heard, Beto O'Rourke was campaigning, and he was talking about the AR-15, and he was doing what a lot of liberals do, which is to incorrectly talk about the AR-15. He was demonizing the AR-15 as a military weapon and a weapon that was made for the Vietnam War, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's just totally ignorance on the part of Beto. The AR-15 has nothing to do with the Vietnam War or any military. But anyway, somebody shouted something at him, and he turned around and said something that I cannot repeat on the podcast. But it starts with the letter M, and in the middle there's the letter F. So mother, you know what? And of course, that's gotten a lot of publicity. I'm not sure if this was a setup, meaning somebody set him up for this, or whether this was natural. I don't know. I don't really care. But it has put, to say the least, Beto O'Rourke in the news. He's been doing a lot of campaigning across the state, and it put him in the news, not in a most favorable way. But when you are Beto O'Rourke, you need publicity because obviously this is going to be a very tough election for him in November. So I have a post about this, and we'll talk about it more with George. George has been following the Beto O'Rourke campaign much closely, because a lot of it is happening down there in the San Antonio, Central Texas area, and that's where Beto has been campaigning. So we'll talk to George about that, and we're also going to talk about the raid on President Trump's home, and that's the main topic today that I want to get into with you because I want to tell you what I think happened. Now, this is my opinion. This is not based on any inside information. I don't have any access to the FBI, to the Department of Justice, to the Trump campaign. I'm just going to tell you what I think happened and why I think this is going to be very conflictive and very difficult, very, very difficult for the Attorney General and ultimately the Biden administration. One of the things that has characterized the Democrats over during the Trump presidency, and especially now that he's out of power, is what many of us have referred to as Trump derangement syndrome. And that is simply an obsession with Trump, this obsession with getting Trump, that you got to get Trump, you got to get Trump, you got to get Trump. Now, this is not the first time in politics that, a group has been obsessed with another politician. It's happened before. But of course, now because of social media and all of that, it gets a lot more attention. But the Democrats have been trying to get Trump for, frankly, ever since he decided to run for president. They had the Russia thing that turned out to be a joke. We know that people within the FBI were talking about his campaign in a way that was completely unprofessional for members of the FBI. So to say that some people in the Democrat Party or in the federal government have been out to get Trump is a little bit, a bit of an understatement. Of course they have. And I think what all of this started with the January 6th committee. And this is my theory. So sit back and listen to my theory. I think a lot of Democrats were hoping that the January 6th committee would not necessarily convict Trump of a crime, but would turn public opinion against Trump. They were going to say a lot of things about him, like the story that he was, trying to take the steering wheel from a Secret Service agent, which is ridiculous. If you know anything about, the situation, it's completely ridiculous. By the way, it's a story that the Secret Service has denied, and they're willing to go on record to deny it. But the committee, of course, is not going to put them on because they don't want to crash the narrative. But I think a lot of Democrats invested themselves a great deal that the January 6th committee was going to at least turn public opinion against President Trump. So they had these hearings, they had all these incredible stories, but the reality is that it has not. In fact, a poll by the Mammoth organization just came out a few days ago saying that 90% of the country has not changed their opinions whatsoever about January the 6th. In other words, if you, like me, thought that the whole thing had not blown out of proportion, but certainly the attacks on Trump were blown out of proportion, then you feel the same way. And if you're a Democrat and you think they should hang Trump from a tree, you think the same way. So the situation, politically speaking, the January 6th committee has not done anything to change the political situation in the country. So now the Democrats are running out of time because everything's going to change after the elections in November. When the Republicans take over the House, the January 6th committee is going to change. It probably will cease to exist. And if it does exist, it'll be with a different focus. It's going to be more on looking at the big picture, such as why wasn't the Capitol protected? So the Democrats realize that the clock is working against them. So apparently somebody told them that there was a document in the Florida home of former President Trump, that there was a document there that was very, very serious. So they went to a judge. Now they looked for a judge, you know, what they like to call, you go shopping for a judge. So you look for the one judge more likely or most likely to sign your warrant. So they found this very liberal judge in Florida who signed off on it. And then they went into the house of the former president. First of all, if they thought there was a document in President Trump's or former President Trump's possession, the smartest and the easiest way to get that document, again, the smartest and the easiest way would have been to go through the courts. And even if you have to go to the Supreme Court and issue a subpoena, and the Supreme Court very likely would defend the subpoena and tell President Trump that he's got to give up the document. Just a little history on the side here. You all remember the Nixon tapes back in the summer of 1974, when President Nixon had some tapes and the tapes were requested. He didn't want to give them up. So they went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, you have to give them up. And he did. He had to. So the same thing would have happened here. The courts would have eventually forced President Trump to give up whatever document they say he was not supposed to have. Now, the other thing going on here, too, is that there were negotiations between the Trump people and whatever the name of the organization is that keeps these records. So they were talking. The idea that he was not cooperating with them is not true. So anyway, so here we have the clock is ticking, and you have an administration basically made up of people who are obsessed with Trump. I mean, they just cannot spend 2 minutes of their life without talking about Trump. So they figured, let's go in there, let's grab this document, and then we got him. Well, it's not turning out that way. In fact, I think most people are reacting the way I am. And I think even many Democrats would probably tell you that this is a very stupid thing to do. Because for one thing, we've never done that before in the United States. We've never broken into the house of a former president, you know, especially not over documents. I mean, my gosh, I mean, presidents in the past have had problems with documents, but we never go to this extreme. So I think that they must have thought that there was something in there that they could pull out and then embarrass President Trump with it. I don't think there is. I will tell you this right now. No, I'm taking a leap here when I say this because I have not seen the documents, but judging by the way that the Attorney General looked on TV a couple of days ago, or yesterday, I guess, judging by the body language of that man, I don't think he's got anything. And I think he looked to me scared to death, because I don't think they do. And even if they do, it's not going to be a document that justifies anywhere near this reaction of going into his home and breaking in and allegedly going through the former first lady's closets, and, you know, which is, of course, that's pretty crazy thing to do. So that's my guess, that I think they thought this is our last chance. We got to go in. We got to get this document. And now they find themselves in deep trouble. I don't think there's going to be a document that they're going to find, or a document that certainly would justify this level of an intervention in the former president's house. I think what's going to happen is that the Biden administration is going to look pretty silly after all of this. I believe that the Attorney General will be fired, if not resign. So will the director of the FBI. And this is going to turn out to be a very, very embarrassing chapter in the Biden administration. And the one thing that I think it has done is it has illuminated people as to the risk of the so-called deep state. You know, when the FBI can do something like this and use a document to get into even a former president's house, that's a pretty scary thing to do. The other thing too that I cannot believe that they didn't think this at the White House. See, this is what I was talking a minute ago about Trump derangement syndrome. That when you get into that kind of an obsession point of, I mean, when your mind is obsessed with somebody, you tend to do a lot of stupid things, and because you're not thinking logically. And it amazes me there wasn't anybody around the Attorney General who said, "Mr. Attorney General, I understand what you're trying to do, but this is going to be very risky politically to do. Let's not do this. Let's try to go through the courts and find the document." I'm amazed that nobody said that to him. And if they said that to him, I'm amazed that he didn't listen to that point of view, because what the Attorney General has done by authorizing this entry into the president's home, frankly, is to make things a lot worse. So that's again, I'm not basing this on any knowledge or inside knowledge. Nobody obviously has called me and told me what's going on. I'm just looking at the situation, a combination of Trump derangement syndrome with a clock ticking against the January 6th committee and a bunch of Democrats obsessed with Trump. And I think when you put it all together, you get some people who do some stupid things. And that's what this is all about. This was a very stupid thing. And I will predict to you, I know I'm going out on the limb here, and I know that, I may regret saying what I'm about to say, but I'll go ahead and say it. I believe that the Attorney General's days are gone. I think he's got, he'll be around for a while, but he's not going to be there very long. The White House is distancing itself from the Attorney General. The poor guy was left alone. And you're not hearing anything from Joe Biden in support of the Attorney General. I mean, there's total silence from the White House. So the Attorney General is on his own on this. And President Trump, who's a brilliant strategist, is obviously going to come back and say, if I was President Trump, I would say, okay, there's nothing there. Prove me wrong. And I believe that that's what's going to happen. So that's why, my story is the way it is. It's just my opinion. I'm not basing this on anybody's. I don't have any sources or anything like that. I'm just looking at the facts and telling you that when you combine Trump derangement syndrome with a January 6th committee that is not producing anything and a bunch of people who are obsessed with Trump, what you get is a bunch of people who make stupid decisions, like breaking into the former president's home and, crashing a tradition that has never, we've never had this happen before. And believe me, and I'm sure my friend Sally, who's a history teacher, I'm sure she knows that we've had political passions before. This is not the first time that the president and the outgoing president don't like each other. I mean, we've had worse cases like that in American history. So it's like, come on. There've been very bad political passions in the past, but never was something like this done to go after a former president. So anyway, that's my prediction. That's what I think is going to happen. That's why I think it happened the way it happened. And we'll see. I guess you can check with me in about 30 days and tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. But I think this was a stupid mistake made by a bunch of people who are hysterical about Trump, and they're going to pay the ultimate price. I think the Attorney General will be gone, and the Director of FBI will be gone, and the Biden presidency will be hurt even more than it is already. Now, I'll say one last thing, just as they say, just a footnote. All of this, I could be proven 100% wrong if next week they come up with a document where, they show that Donald Trump was violating, I don't know, something. But I don't see it. I honestly don't. I don't see that. What I see is there may be documents, but none of it rises to the level of criminality that would justify what we have just seen. So check out my chat with George Rodriguez on Friday night on the podcast. We're going to talk about Texas, and we're going to talk a little bit about the raid on on President Trump's home. So thank you for listening. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you later. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.